Purpose of this audio recording is to go over this in-class essay that you will have tomorrow in class. And so you will have a better understanding of what will take place tomorrow in my absence today. So we went over this yesterday in class, the various topics that you can choose from, and you have a 3x5 index card that you can put notes on that you can have with you during the exam. You can have quotes from the text. You can have thoughts, any planning that you want on there. But that is the only thing that you can have other than your piece of paper, your Google Doc. So you can have that with you when you go to write. The question, this piece of paper, I will hand that out as well, this actual piece of paper. So that will be out there as well. And then the other document will also be out there that I'm about to show you, which will also be in the Google Doc shortly. So that is it, though. I will be very strict about coming around and checking and making sure that you guys do not have anything written on your papers, that you don't have anything on your Google Docs, that there's nothing in the history. So the purpose of this is really to give you guys just that timed writing experience, because you will have that quite a bit in college with the little blue books that you open up and it looks like a little notebook, and you have just a timed writing in class. Very similar in a lot of ways to the AP exam, which you guys experienced last year and that you don't experience obviously this year. And so that's kind of one reason why we are doing this. Also, this is a way to kind of take this longer paper and shorten it to a one-day experience where you are still practicing analysis, but in just a shortened time frame. So that is why we are doing it in this way. Okay, so don't try to manipulate the system or anything. There's really no reason for that. This is a way to give you guys all an even playing field. So just make sure you take your notes, that you pick a topic, that you do the proper research for it, that you find support for it in the text, and that you have kind of an idea of how you want your essay to flow. There's no reason for you to go and write up a whole draft ahead of time. You just need to make sure that you have your topic, you have your support, your actual evidence, and that you just think through it in advance, so that when you have that 45, 50 minutes in which to write during class, that you are just spending that time pretty much writing. Okay? So here are the topics. You guys already know these topics. So the only topic that is a little open-ended is this free choice. If you are unsure of any of these topics, have any questions about these topics, have any questions about this assignment in general, please feel free to email me. I am homesick today with strep throat, as many of you may or may not know. So I am available to some degree through email, but so I can respond, maybe not as quickly as I may be able, as you may want me to, but I can definitely respond to you at some point today. So these are all the different topics. We went over those previously. Again, the way that you can cite the play in writing, you see the one way right here, Act 5, Scene 1. Another way that you can cite is to say 5:1. Okay. Okay, so either the Roman numerals or just the regular numerals, either way is fine. All right. So those are the topics, and we went over those yesterday. So there shouldn't be any questions about those necessarily. But if there are, feel free to email me. So how to actually write the analysis, you guys should have looked at the Purdue OWL PowerPoint previously, and I did go over those with some of the classes, and so that should kind of give you an idea that this is not just summarizing what Hamlet was about or the plot, or here's the character and here's what the character did. You are looking at a character, you are looking at, what purpose did that character play, or analyzing and looking at why did the author choose to do this? What bigger purpose did this have in the text? And so this document right here, which you'll find in Canvas, this is all very important to the analysis essay. So the topic development, you want to make sure that the content that you have, that what you're saying is appropriate to the topic, that it's sophisticated, that it's full, that you have details and quotes. You don't necessarily have to have like a direct quote for every single little point that you're making, but please do not write this entire essay where you're analyzing something and not use at least some specific references to the play. That's kind of silly. In terms of the way your paper will actually be organized, you're going to have an introduction and a conclusion, of course, and then you're going to have body paragraphs. So your introduction is going to start off with some sort of a hook or lead, and then ultimately you're going to have your thesis in there. And at some point in your introduction, you're going to want to have the title and the author of your work referenced. And you're going to want to have like some sort of a roadmap, like the references to the points covered in the thesis. Your body paragraphs. So, it just kind of depending on how many points that you're making, you might have like one body paragraph, you might have two, you might have three. It just honestly depends on how many points you're making. You're going to have topic sentences, supportive details, concluding sentences, and unity throughout. Okay, some very important things. Probably the most important thing to remember in this paper. Very, very important. And I'm going to highlight this and actually probably physically highlight this so you guys see this. Is that this should not say I, me, my, or you anywhere in the paper. It shouldn't say I think Hamlet did this or I think Hamlet did that. It should stay in third person the entire time. Okay. So I want to show you an example of a literary analysis paper from a couple of years ago. Now, this is a paper from an AP literature student, and this is when they actually had time to type it in class. And so they had several days to type it and work on it and develop it. And so this wasn't just done in a class period, obviously, but you can see what literary analysis is, and I will break it down for you as we look at it. So just pay attention here and follow me as I go through this. Okay, so what this writer is doing is they are looking at foils. Their topic is foils. Okay, so they are looking at foils, and they are looking at how foils help tie into Hamlet's tragic flaw. Okay, so introduction. In all tragedies, the protagonist possesses an apparent flaw which will eventually precipitate their demise. The main task of the author is to write this trait in a way that is evident to the audience. To do this, authors will use foils, one or more characters that have contrasting traits, to further enhance the flaw of the main character. For example, William Shakespeare, an author well known for his tragedies, often includes foils for this aforementioned purpose. Hamlet, one of Shakespeare's most noted works, features a young prince seeking to avenge his father's homicide by murdering the killer, Claudius, the prince's uncle. In his classic tragedy, Hamlet, Shakespeare created foils such as Fortinbras, Ophelia, and Laertes to further emphasize Prince Hamlet's tragic flaw, his habit of overthinking when calculating his revenge. Okay, so let me stop right there and show you what this writer does really well here. Okay, first of all, I'm going to kind of highlight on this PDF where this writer's thesis statement is. Okay, so this is the writer's thesis statement. So first of all, what this writer does really well, and granted, you only have 50 minutes to write, so you might not be able to necessarily set up the introduction in as much depth. You may not be able to have. This person had a 3-part thesis and is making 3 points about about the foil. You may only be able to talk about 2 foils because 50 minutes is not a lot of time to write about foils and whatnot. And so you might only have 2. And again, you don't have to write about foils. In fact, I hope you guys don't write about foils because then I'm going to think that you're just trying to replicate vocab word. Anyway, I'm going to think that you're trying to replicate what this writer is doing. So we see here that this writer chose not just to talk about, hey, Shakespeare used foils in Hamlet, great, grand, wonderful, but Hamlet chose to use foils to emphasize Hamlet's tragic flaws. That is excellent. So this writer is going to further prove throughout the paper, that is her argument. Her argument is not just that Shakespeare used these foils in the play. She identified who the foils were, Fortinbras, Ophelia, Laertes, but she emphasized why the foils were used. They emphasized Hamlet's tragic flaw, and she identified what that tragic flaw was, that he overthinks, that he as we know, he's indecisive. He can't make a decision. So she does all of that within her thesis statement. Okay, that is the essence of analyzing literature. Okay, folks, it's not just identifying something. It's not just saying, hey, there are foils in Hamlet. Laertes is a foil. Okay, it's saying, okay, great, there are foils in Hamlet, but why are they there? What does that foil do? Okay, so looking back at the topics, okay, religion in the play, okay, all right, so religion is mentioned in the play. The presence of the ghosts, the life and death, God, providence, okay, religion in the play. All right, so religion is mentioned in the play. Great, grand, wonderful. All right, so why? What's the point? So what? Okay, so analyzing literature, analyzing Hamlet would mean taking it a step further, making an argument about what Shakespeare was trying to prove about religion in the play. And that's where there's no right or wrong answer necessarily about that. Sure, there are many experts out there, literary critics and whatnot, who have their beliefs about what they think Shakespeare was trying to do and whatnot, and they've certainly written about it. But you can formulate your own argument and use support from the book, from the text, and go from there. Okay? So literary analysis is about using the text and formulating your own argument, asking the question, so what? And going beyond just the basic, okay, this is here in the text. Why is it there? How is it being used? And so forth. So, again, looking at Horatio and Fortinbras. Okay, so in that example that we had, so she identifies the foils, and she says that they were there to emphasize the tragic flaw. Okay, so then if you were writing about Horatio and Fortinbras being, the lone quasi-major characters that are alive in the play, well, why are they left alive? What in their nature, what in their characteristics and personalities maybe What purpose is it that they are still alive? Is there something in their personality traits and their characterization and their characteristics that Shakespeare made that allowed them to still be alive? And if so, what point was Shakespeare trying to make in that? What point about life was he trying to make with that? So you got to dig deep and ask those bigger questions and then make an argument about that. That is literary analysis, okay? So what we see going on in this introduction here in this paper, in this literary analysis, is that we have this writer introduce the author, the play, has a super, super quick young prince seeking to avenge his father's homicide. We see like literally a very quick synopsis of what the play is about. And then we see that very excellent thesis statement. Now, then what you see this writer do in the subsequent paragraphs is that she's going to go through and start breaking it down. So first, Shakespeare created Fortinbras, the Prince of Norway, to serve as one of Hamlet's foils. Fortinbras aids in highlighting Hamlet's insufficiency as a monarch. Throughout the play, the characters discuss Fortinbras, who is conducting and traveling with an army. This itself contrasts with Hamlet's role as a prince, as he remains within the castle for the majority of the story. The first mention of Fortinbras's travels occurs when Horatio, Bernardo, and Marcellus are on watch outside the castle. Horatio, when discussing the sudden preparations for war currently being made in Denmark, recounts, "Now, sir, young Fortinbras of unimproved mettle, hot and full, hath in the skirts of Norway here and there sharped up a list of lawless resolutes for the purpose of taking those for sale lands by his father lost." Okay, this right here also is how you want to cite the play, okay? So my assumption is that most of you are going to be just using the play as your source. So the way you want to cite it is either by Roman numerals or just numerals. And so it's pretty easy because it's you either switch out the Roman numerals for numerals or you just do it like this, okay? So she's chosen the Roman numerals. And then if you don't want to do the Roman numerals and you want to do the regular numerals, then you just switch it out. So as you can see, this is Act 1, Scene 1, lines 95 through 105. So that is where these lines take place. Okay? So you can see that you have the quotation where it ends, the citation, Act 1, Act 1. So you have Roman numeral 1. Capitalized, period, lowercase I, period, 95 through 105, end of parentheses, period. This is how you would cite the play. Okay? So if you don't want to use the Roman numerals like that, then you can just use like 1, period, 1, period, 95. So you can just use it a 1 instead. Either way, it's fine. Okay. If during the exam tomorrow you have a question about citing, you can raise your hand because that's no big deal. But you do need to cite direct quotations like that. So you can see that she explains why. So she is explaining how Fortinbras is a foil and how him being a foil emphasizes his tragic flaw of overthinking, and how him being a monarch and how his behavior changes and so forth. Then she moves on to Ophelia, and then she moves on to Laertes. Okay. Secondly, Ophelia, Hamlet's former love interest, is another foil of Hamlet. Throughout the play, Hamlet contemplates committing suicide. This is apparent in his soliloquies. And she says all that. He consistently broods over the subject, but despite his mental exertion, Hamlet never ends his life. Following the murder of his father, Ophelia is driven to madness, and shortly after her lack of sanity is revealed, she commits suicide. In Act 4, Scene 7, Gertrude exclaims Ophelia has drowned while collecting flowers near a brook. Ophelia, who is not explicitly thought about doing so, commits suicide hastily to resolve her conflict, while Hamlet, who is frequently considered the action, does not. Not only does Hamlet fail to follow through with his suicide, but he also fails to resolve his conflict in any way. So here we see the connection between Hamlet and Ophelia being drawn because, Hamlet talks. He talks a lot about doing things. He talks a lot about suicide, rightly so, as he's devastated by the loss of his father. But, Ophelia, she loses her father too, is driven to madness, and actually very quickly does do what he talks about so often. And so in a way is kind of a foil that you don't even really ever think about. So she brings that up. Okay. So all of these foils that she brings up in her essay are people who take action, where Hamlet doesn't. Okay. Fortinbras, Ophelia, and Laertes. They take action where Hamlet does not. And so she makes an argument about that through act. Okay. And so then she finishes by talking about to act as foils to the person. They stress the flaw of indecisiveness, and then wraps it up with a conclusion. Is okay. So the main point here, though, the main argument, you want to make sure that you have that strong thesis at the end of your introduction. You can certainly, if you want to plan out your thesis and have that on your note card ahead of time, that would be wise. So that is literary analysis. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Have a good day.